The legacy of the Crusades in the Middle East. The Crusades, though initially conceived as a religious campaign to reclaim Christian holy sites, had a profound and lasting impact on the Middle East. Spanning 2 centuries, these campaigns left behind a legacy that shaped the region's political, cultural, and religious landscape. For the Middle East, the Crusades were more than a temporary invasion. They were a defining chapter in its history, influencing its collective memory, its view of the West, and its internal dynamics. 1. Political impact, unification, and resilience. The arrival of the Crusaders in the late 11th century occurred during a period of political fragmentation in the Islamic world. The Crusades inadvertently catalyzed efforts to unify Muslim territories and resist foreign incursions. Fragmentation before the Crusades. At the time of the First Crusade, the Middle East was divided among various powers, including the Sunni Seljuk Turks in Anatolia and Persia, the Shia Fatimid Caliphate in Egypt, and smaller emirates scattered across Syria and Palestine. Rivalries between these factions initially allowed the Crusaders to capture Jerusalem and establish the Crusader states. Unification under leaders like Saladin. The Crusades prompted the rise of leaders such as Saladin, who succeeded in uniting Muslim forces across Egypt, Syria, and Mesopotamia. Saladin's victory at the Battle of Hattin in 1187 and his subsequent recapture of Jerusalem became symbols of Islamic resistance and unity. This period of unification, though short-lived, demonstrated the potential for collective action against external threats. The Mamluks and the end of the Crusades. The final expulsion of the Crusaders from the Holy Land in 1291 was led by the Mamluks, a dynasty of former slave soldiers. Their military prowess and centralized rule reinforced the notion of a strong Islamic defense against Western incursions. The Mamluk victory marked the end of the Crusader presence in the Middle East but left behind a legacy of vigilance against foreign invaders. 2. Religious and cultural identity. The Crusades significantly influenced the development of religious and cultural identity in the Middle East, shaping how Islamic societies viewed themselves and their adversaries. Islamic solidarity and resistance. The Crusades reinforced the concept of jihad as both a spiritual and military struggle to defend Islam. While jihad was already an established principle, its application during the Crusades emphasized the defense of Islamic lands against non-Muslim forces. This interpretation of jihad became a central part of Islamic identity and discourse in the region. Perception of the West. The Crusades shaped how the Islamic world viewed the West. The brutality of the Crusader campaigns, including the massacres of civilians in Jerusalem and other cities, left a deep impression on Muslim societies. These events were recorded in detail by Islamic chroniclers such as Ibn al-Athir, whose accounts emphasized the savagery and destructiveness of the Crusaders. For many in the Middle East, the Crusades became a symbol of Western aggression, a perception that continues to influence contemporary attitudes toward the West. Modern political rhetoric often invokes the Crusades as a historical precedent for Western imperialism and intervention in the region. Cultural exchange and adaptation. Despite the violence, the Crusades also facilitated cultural exchange between the Islamic world and Europe. Islamic medicine, mathematics, and philosophy influenced European thought, while Crusaders introduced European customs and goods to the Middle East. This exchange enriched both civilizations, even as it occurred within the context of conflict. 3. Economic impact. The Crusades had a mixed economic impact on the Middle East, disrupting local economies while also stimulating trade and commerce. Destruction and displacement. The Crusader invasions devastated many towns and cities, disrupting agricultural production and trade networks. Jerusalem, Antioch, and Acre experienced significant population displacement and economic decline during periods of Crusader control. Trade networks and economic revival. Conversely, the Crusades also stimulated trade between the Middle East and Europe. The demand for spices, textiles, and other luxury goods in Europe created new opportunities for Middle Eastern merchants. Cities like Damascus and Aleppo became vital centers of commerce, connecting European traders with goods from Asia and Africa. Maritime trade and the rise of coastal cities. Coastal cities such as Acre and Tyre flourished as hubs of maritime trade during the Crusader period. These cities served as points of interaction between European merchants and Middle Eastern traders, fostering economic interdependence that persisted long after the Crusades ended. 4. Architectural and urban legacy. The Crusades left a visible architectural legacy in the Middle East, with both Crusader and Islamic contributions shaping the region's built environment. Crusader castles and fortifications. The Crusaders constructed numerous castles and fortresses, many of which still stand today. Structures like Croix de Chevaliers in Syria and Belvoir Fortress in Palestine exemplify the military engineering of the Crusaders. These fortifications became symbols of Western occupation but were also repurposed by Muslim rulers after the Crusaders' departure. Islamic architectural advancements. In response to the Crusader presence, Islamic rulers invested in the construction of mosques, madrasas, Islamic schools, and hospitals, reinforcing Islamic identity through architecture. The Dome of the Rock and Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem, already significant Islamic landmarks, were restored and enhanced during this period, asserting Muslim dominance over the contested city. 5. Intellectual and historical legacy. The Crusades profoundly shaped the intellectual and historical narratives of the Middle East, influencing how the region interpreted its past and engaged with its future. Historiography of the Crusades. Islamic historians chronicled the Crusades extensively, providing detailed accounts of the battles, sieges, and negotiations. These works, including those by Ibn al-Qalanisi and Usama ibn Munkid, offer invaluable insights into the Muslim perspective on the Crusades. Their narratives emphasize themes of resistance, resilience, and the eventual triumph of Islamic forces. Impact on legal and theological thought. The Crusades also influenced Islamic jurisprudence and theology. Scholars debated the proper conduct of jihad and the relationship between rulers and religious leaders in times of war. These discussions enriched Islamic legal and philosophical traditions, contributing to their evolution. Inspiration for future generations. The memory of the Crusades became a source of inspiration for later generations of Muslim leaders. Figures like Sultan Baybars and even modern political movements have invoked the legacy of resistance against the Crusaders to rally support for their causes. 6. Modern resonances of the Crusades in the Middle East. The legacy of the Crusades continues to resonate in the Middle East, shaping contemporary political and cultural narratives. Symbol of Western aggression. For many in the modern Middle East, the Crusades are seen as a precursor to Western imperialism. The language of the Crusades has been used in political R.H. The modern implications of the Crusades in the Middle East. The legacy of the Crusades extends beyond the medieval period, shaping the modern political, cultural, and religious dynamics of the Middle East. The Crusades are not merely historical events. They have become powerful symbols and reference points in contemporary narratives about Western intervention, resistance, and cultural identity. 1. The Crusades as a symbol in modern political rhetoric. The memory of the Crusades is often invoked in political discourse, particularly in the Middle East, where it serves as a symbol of Western aggression and domination. Western colonialism and imperialism. During the era of European colonialism in the 19th and 20th centuries, the parallels between the Crusades and Western domination of the Middle East were drawn frequently. The Crusader states were seen as an early form of foreign occupation, akin to the colonial mandates imposed by Britain and France after World War I. This analogy reinforced the idea that Western powers were continuing a historical pattern of intrusion into the region. Modern conflicts and the Crusader narrative. The term Crusader is often used pejoratively by some political and religious groups in the Middle East to describe Western powers. For example, Al-Qaeda and ISIS have referred to Western military interventions in the Middle East as Crusades, framing their actions as part of a historical struggle against foreign invaders. Leaders like Osama bin Laden explicitly invoked the Crusades to rally support for their agendas, suggesting that modern military campaigns in Iraq and Afghanistan were extensions of the medieval conflict. Rhetoric from Western leaders. At times, Western leaders have also inadvertently reinforced this narrative. For instance, during the early stages of the U.S.-led war on terror, President George W. Bush referred to the campaign as a crusade, a remark that drew significant criticism and highlighted the sensitivity of the term in the Middle East. 2. The Crusades and interfaith relations. The Crusades have had a lasting impact on Christian-Muslim relations, shaping perceptions on both sides and influencing modern interfaith dialogue. Lingering distrust and stereotypes.